Hey, coming to you live. This is Maximus Confesses. So, I haven't used this channel in a while, and I thought I might, kick it into gear once more. Now, there are two things which you might realize, listener, which are out of the ordinary. One, well, I'm back on this channel again. So, yeah, there's that. And two, well, you don't really have a voice for video. Why aren't you doing the whole radio shtick thing? Since I'm coming back to you, I figure I might as well come back in a new, more visual way. Although, if anyone's interested in the old method where I turn it back into radio and, you know, go with the whole just tuning thing, that takes a little too long. I might as well just set up a live hangout and start talking to you guys. So, this is a little unscripted, and it's not going to go in a process which is well, I should say formalized, where I sit down and read off a lot of things. It's just going to have me stuttering a lot. So I apologize to you ahead of time. Also, yes, this is a new haircut or pervasion of a haircut. In any case, putting that to the side. What is going to be the discussion of this hangout? Well, of course, it's going to touch on not the problem of evil, but on another problem. The Bible says, chapter and verse, not specifically off the top of my head, but it's there. God is not the author of evil. What does this entail? Well, there are what I'm going to call two ways of looking at it. One is the ontological way of looking at it, and one is the epistemological way of looking at it. So I want to lay out a thought experiment, but first I also want to give way to two positions in Christianity. One position I will call the Molinist Arminian position, which is there, and the other position I'll call the Thomistic Augustinian view. Now, a Calvinist could partake of this view as well, but some do and some don't. It varies. So I'll leave it up to a Calvinist's discretion, but a Calvinist could fit comfortably with the Augustinian in this position too. Although John Calvin himself doesn't. I don't think he sees evil as a pervasion, at least to my knowledge. In any case. So what is it that the Molinist and the Arminian try to do? They try to say God isn't the author of evil because God doesn't want to cause evil to exist. Rather, he just foreknows that we will commit evil. But in knowing it, he foreordains it anyway and uses it for his glory, which is understandable. But how does that get him off the hook for exactly creating a scenario where evil can take place? He's using it for his glory, but does that absolve him of his authorship? I don't think so. Well, at least any more than the strict Calvinist determinist is. The person who believes that God's determination even determines and creates evil in the world. Why is that? Well, it's quite easy to understand. Let's use this thought experiment called Welty's Gunslinger. Now, for those of you familiar with Super Mario, in Super Mario Bros. 3, there's a version of Bullet Bill called Bullseye Bill. Bullseye Bill, unlike Bullet Bill or your regular Bullet Bill, is capable of honing and seeking Mario because, well, he has eyes, a mouth. There's some implication there that he's an intelligent agent with free will. Now, Welty is a Calvinist, but he kind of gives this analogy. Imagine one scenario. Mario is in your room, you point a gun, and you shoot him, killing him. Now, Mario, not having any flowers or extra lives, dies. You're the author of his murder. There's no question about that. But imagine if you were to fire a bullet bill at him instead. Bullet Bill, having some agency, is still responsible, but knowing the psychology, you know fully well that Bullet Bill is going to kill Mario. And you actualize the state of affairs where Bullet Bill would kill Mario. There's a cause and effect relationship there that takes place that puts you as the author of said murder. You fashioned the gun yourself and you knew it was going to do what it was going to do based off of your design from the get-go. Full knowledge of the workings of the gun that you picked up, and you had full knowledge of the psychology of the bullet you unleashed. same thing is happening. So it's really hard to see how this is going to get us out of the problem. Now, what is the Augustinian Thomistic position? Well, first, tries not to go into the epistemology of the situation and absolve God of authorship merely because he only knows and allows the instance to happen. Rather, the reason is more metaphysical in nature. St. Augustine, following the mindset of the Neoplatonic philosopher Plotinus, imagines evil as being a privation of the good. And by that, he means that evil exists because there's imperfection. Evil is a type of imperfection, of course. That isn't to say all imperfections are evil. I, as a human being, am perfect compared to the Almighty God, but God still calls me good. That, likewise, Jesus himself, in his human nature, has imperfections to him, but it doesn't mean he's evil. His human nature is still good. He never commits any sins either. But he is still good. There is something in his essence that makes him perfect. All human beings are, in essence, perfect. Think of the perfect circle. The perfect circle has no flaw, but as soon as you individuate it into a material thing, the circle takes on certain imperfections. And that's why in the real world, you can't have a perfect circle. You can express a concept with axioms and mathematics, but it can never exist manifest through matter. So, how does evil come into the picture? Well, how does God create the universe? We have essences. We have universals, if you will. Take humanhood. One's humanhood, the universal conception of humanity, is the notion of rational animality. The fact that one is an animal and one is rational, at least on the Aristotelian sense of the term. You might get more specific. You might say man is a rational animal that uses universals and symbols as a way of living their lives. That's a more specific way, but regardless, there's a specific humanhood. Then it's individuated among particular human beings, and they all have humanness. That's an essence instantiated by and individuated with matter or material beings. And evil exists because in our imperfection, we can, as a habit of our free will, actualize certain evils to take place. Is God responsible for these evils? No. And it's not because he's independent of our free will. God is the cause of our free will too. Thomas acknowledges that. Augustine acknowledges that. But what they will not say is this, that God creates evil. He does not create evil so much as allows evil. What he does do is he actualizes or sustains the good in existence. And in doing so, the privation of said good is allowed to coexist therein. So he is not the author of it. To use an analogy, imagine a universe wherein Swiss cheese was to exist from beginning to end. Now, the Swiss cheese, the substantive goodness of the cheese does not author the holes. Rather, the holes exist as a provision of where the cheese could be. In such a case, there is no author of the provision therein, but that provision is only existing because there is something in which is pervade, namely the cheese itself. So evil in our world can can actually have a cause, namely us, human beings, who deprive a goodness of what it is supposed to have, or deprive a substance of what it ought to have. Like if I was to cut off someone's arm, since human beings ought to have arms, um, and to deprive them of it would be evil. I have actualized some evil in the world. I am directly responsible for it. I have what's called secondary causal relations with actualizing evil. God, as the primary cause of all things, doesn't so much as actualize evil, so much as he actualizes the good and allows whatever good therein to then actualize the evil itself. In such a scenario, God himself isn't the author of evil so much as he is the author of good, permitting goods to authorize evil so that he might bring about some greater goodness therein. Um, God's mode of causation isn't the same in such a scenario. To look at it in terms of language, human beings are the secondary cause, and God is the primary cause of creation. Being the primary cause, God sustains it in existence through the good, and secondary causes themselves can actualize goods or they could actualize evils therein. The way we actualize both goods and evils are the same. We stand in causal connections to them, whereas for God, he only actualizes the good, leaving the evil up to the imperfect free will of mankind, to which, while he himself sustains as a good, will allow the freedom to commit evil or predestine them for the good. Augustine and Thomas see evil as something which God allows, which he could prevent, but allows because he knows later on he could bring about some greater good from it. And I think I have a viewer, which is pretty nice. Wonder if I left the comments on. Um, in any case, if anyone is commenting, I'll be happy to try to respond in real time. Uh, and let's see, doesn't seem to be anyone in the live chat, but whoever's being entertained, I hope I can be of some benefit. So this, I would say, is probably the best route for the Augustinian, the Thomist, the Calvinist, or anyone in the Christian tradition to take. God is not the author of evil. Man is the author of evil. God is the author of good. He allows the evil to persist, but he does not stand in a primary causal connection to it, because he only sustains the good in existence. Another way to consider it is think of a flame coming about from wood. The flame itself, as it comes up, is caused by the wood, and of course, in that being actualized, there is flame about. Now, this doesn't mean there aren't parts of the flame where a bit of uh, uh, wind and air are present. That's an absence of flame. But does that come about from the source itself? No, that might come about because um, the flame itself might not be as strong enough to withhold the wind. Yeah, you know what? That's a terrible analogy. I take it back. But I guess that's the great thing about live hangouts. Maybe you're a little more forgiven. In any case, uh, maybe it's best not to treat secondary causes as being the same as primary causes, given that secondary causes don't stand in the same relation to creation as God does. The fact of the matter remains, in sustaining the good, God only permits the evil, but in us, either willing to cause goods or cause evils, we can stand in a direct causal relation towards either. we do not have the same luxury of saying we did not actualize the evil by sustaining the good. Rather, um, the good and the evil are equally before us to actualize. So we should understand us and ourselves um, in this contingent light, as contingent creatures capable of evil. And yeah, I think that's the end of the broadcast. I don't want to belabor this point. I've belabored it enough already. In any case, ciao.